Welcome to Hooked on Songwriting, the podcast where songwriters reveal the fascinating stories behind their songs and much more. Now here's your host, Luann Hunt.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hooked on Songwriting. There are obviously a lot of very talented singer-songwriters out today, but the ones that stand out to me are the ones that can also entertain. They really know how to tell a story through their music, but they also can set those stories up in a way that makes you riveted when you're listening because you just can't wait to hear the whole tale, right? And I happened to meet a gentleman a while back. His name is Ken Holt, and he's one of those songwriters that he's fabulous at the craft, but he also can entertain you like nobody's business. And to me, that's kind of a lost art these days. So I am very, very excited to have him on the podcast today. And I know that you're going to find him extremely fascinating. He is charming, he's funny, and just a joy to listen to. So without further ado, let's welcome Ken Holt to the show. Hello, Ken. So happy to have you here today. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, Annie, if I may call you that. I'm doing just fine.
Awesome. Well, I saw you at one of the folk festivals here in Florida a few months ago, and I was just blown away at your talent. You're just incredible. Wow. So I'm excited to talk to you about your background in music and how you got started and just your whole journey. So maybe we can just kind of start out with your beginnings and how all this music unfolded for you.
I mean, I like a lot of people, music. I probably started playing music when I was like in high school. Played in my first band, and played in bands a good part of my adult life. I'm kind of a band person. I kind of hear music, from a band perspective, and going back that far, even though it was I was playing in bands, I always had an acoustic guitar. Of course, it wasn't always electric stuff, and so I was always I guess fiddling around with with trying to write a song, and I guess probably like a lot of songwriters when they're first starting out, who you're writing about. You're writing about your boyfriend, you're writing about your girlfriend, and all that kind of stuff, when you're a kid. But and so it's kind of funny for me now, just kind of jump to the present. Some of those chord progressions and whatnot, those real simple chord progressions that I was just learning when I was 16. I'm starting to use those again, and maybe it's because they have kind of a warm, a cozy feeling for me, and some of those melodies that can land over the top of those real simple chord progressions, are starting to work for me again. So I'm still at it. I'm still at it. I don't know how deep you want to go.
Oh, I was just curious too, when you started to get an interest that where you were serious about it and you thought, I'm going to try to write some songs and see what I can do here.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I mean, after I got out of college, I mean, I played in bands all through high school and college and all of that, and that was all good. And when I got out of college, I went to Jacksonville University, up in Jacksonville, of course, and met a guy in my biology class at Jacksonville University who was from Maine, who was from Kennebunkport, Maine. And I'm not sure at that point, it's kind of embarrassing to say this, but just graduated from college, I'm not sure I even knew where Maine was, So I said, oh, so he was from Maine, and he said, okay, we're just all getting out of school. Would you like to come up to Maine and for the summer, and because Maine is very much a summer kind of kind of a place in terms of when the businesses are open and everything. Yeah, so we come up to Maine and we get a job playing as the house band in Kennebunkport, play 5 nights a week, and you can come up and do that for 3 months, and so I thought, well, that sounds like a good idea. I just get out of college, and I can avoid cutting my hair and getting a job, and all that stuff, and so I went up to Maine, and long story short, what started out as like a 3 month trip to Maine turned into 10 years, and I wound up playing with the guy who had invited me up, plus some other people for a period of about 10 years, and that band was really what really lit the songwriting fire in me and in the band, because when you're yeah you get to a point in any band, if you want to kind of if you want to kind of break through the glass ceiling, so to speak, you have to start writing your own music. You can only play cover songs, and then you can only go so far playing cover songs, with all due respect to doing that. But you really have to start writing your own material. So it was really during that 10-year period up there that I really started working on my songwriting, and it's really, I mean, it's never stopped. I'm always kind of ruminating around with a potential song, or you hear somebody say something, and that cues you, and you start to think, gee, there might be a song there, or you hear a cool chord progression, and so all of that has been going on for me, for quite a while now, and I'm still doing it, and I still enjoy it, just as much as I ever have, and I think it's funny. I was just thinking about it, I was kind of you're thinking about our conversation, and thinking that for me, playing music, and whether it's in a band situation or a solo situation, or whatever it might be, a duo or whatever, I think that for me is probably when I'm the happiest and the most joyful and the most comfortable, really. And that's really kind of my comfort place, and I'm sure it's has a lot to do with the fact that I've have been doing it for a while now, and that's the place that I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying completely and totally relate to it, especially about it's something sort of that's just part of you, right? And you do it because you're driven to do it and you have a passion for it, and you sort of can't help yourself, right? Like when you said you maybe hear something and you say, "Oh, that would make a good song." I do
Yeah,
that too all the time, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I give you an example. I mean, I live in Satellite Beach, Florida, and I was in the Satellite Beach um, post office, the other day, and there was a guy in line, right in front of me, and he was trying to start a conversation with a woman who was right in front of him. He's trying to get something going with this lady in the line at the post office. So she gets called up to the office, or to the counter, and she does her business, and then she leaves, and then he gets called up next. He goes up, and he goes up to the clerk, and he says with a lot of excitement, he says, "Hey, was she is she married?" And the clerk said, "Man, I don't know if she was married or not. She just came in to buy stamps." So then he turns around to all of us, in line, and we're all kind of watching this guy go through his thing here, and he turns around to all of us and he says, "Well, I'm just too old to be shy." And immediately I thought, there's a song there. There's a song there. So I wrote a song, and then the first two lines are, "I'm too old to be shy, too young to fade away." So that's one of the songs that I enjoy doing. But I mean, that kind of happened in the Satellite Beach post office. So you never know when somebody's going to say something that you're going to steal.
I've done that many a times in my songwriting career, so I get it. And that is a really good hook, what he said.
Yeah, yeah, I thought so too. I thought too old to be shy. I said that's got to come from somewhere. It's got to be a bumper sticker or something. I don't know if he created it or not, or but now I borrowed it or stole it. I don't know which.
It's really fun to take a line like that and then use your creativity to sort of create a story around it because
Yeah,
you just have the line, right? And so it's like, well, now I have to invent a story to go with this line,
that's
but that
right.
process can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. So the line, yeah, is just kind of the beginning of the process, isn't it?
Yep,
You know,
that's true.
somebody gave you a jump start. Oh, where do you go from here? Any chords? I need a bridge. Oh, okay. Now it gets more complicated. But yeah.
Yeah, I was on vacation, I think it was last year, and we were driving through this strip mall and I saw this Chinese restaurant and it was called the Crazy Buffet.
The crazy who?
The Crazy Buffet.
Oh,
And I said to Jim, I said, that's a song if I ever heard it, the Crazy Buffet.
the
So I wrote
crazy
it down.
buffet.
Once in a while, I like to do the comedy, and I know that you do too, because some of the songs that I heard you sing were very, very clever and funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I'm glad you think that. Glad you thought that. Yeah. I try to use humor. I think you can, I think you can use humor and you can get away with saying things that you might not say if you were more direct. You can kind of say things in a humorous kind of way, and for those who have ears, let them hear. And people are going to hear different things in your songs anyway. But if someone wants to draw a deeper meaning out of it, well, they can do that. If they want to just kind of laugh with it, well, that's fine too. But yeah, yeah.
I went to comedy traffic school one time, and it was really fun. I mean, everybody had a great time, but afterwards, I was talking to the instructor, and we were talking about what a great idea that was for traffic school. And he said, if you can make them laugh, you got their heart.
Wow.
And he was right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably good advice for all of us, isn't it?
I think it is,
You
because
know?
I think we all paid more attention in that class because it it was humorous and not the whole thing, but it was just the way it was put together. It's like we all had a great time, and you started to think about your driving in a way maybe that you wouldn't have thought about before if you had just gone to some boring traffic school.
Right, right, yeah. So he said what again? Because I want to remember that. He said if you've got
He
if
said
you
if you can make them laugh, you've got their heart.
if you can make them laugh, you've got their heart. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. I want to that makes sense to me. Yeah. I didn't I didn't I've never really quite thought about it in those particular words, but that's a nice way of putting it. So
I thought it was too.
yeah,
I think it's true. So in terms of your style, it seems
yeah.
like it's got a lot of folk influence to it, and I'm sure you have some jazz there going on and little blues. And tell me more about your style and how that's developed over the years.
Well, usually I write on an acoustic guitar, so that kind of And I'm not a finger picker in my style. I'm more of a strummer, like a country kind of strummer, rock and roll kind of strummer, and so that's kind of how I play. And so I guess maybe because I've written on acoustic guitar predominantly, I guess that kind of lends itself to the folk genre a bit. I mean, when I played at the Will McLean Festival there, which is where you and I met, um, I mean, honestly, I mean that was the first folk festival, folk unquote folk festival that I'd ever played at, because had never thought of myself as a folk artist, you know. I'm just thought of I mean, I'm just a guy who writes guitars, who writes songs on acoustic guitars, Um, but when you do that, you can kind of slide into that folk arena a bit, I guess. Evidently, I did. And and then and then the other piece of it is that rock and roll piece, and I'm sure that comes from, well, no doubt that comes from playing in a lot of bands, and some bands were very very well, I don't know. Some of my influences are like everybody, Beatles, I mean, I grew up with the Allman Brothers up in Jacksonville. I listened to a lot of bluegrass music in my dad's pickup truck. That's always what he had going on. And I played in a lot of cover bands and all that stuff. So I have all those kinds of influences. So those, but the rock and roll thing, I think I mean, that's a part of me. I mean, I'll sit down and strum on a guitar, and it'll often start out with a kind of a rock and roll kind of feel to it, and then and now I guess in later years, and maybe it's got more country as well, that kind of country rockish kind of thing. All the, using what they call cowboy chords, right? I don't know if you've probably heard them call that, right?
Yeah.
Your G, C's, and D's, and your A minors and your E minors, and I mean, you can write a lot of songs with cowboy chords, and
Three
so
chords and the truth.
three, I just bought that T-shirt from the songwriter place there, as a matter of fact, yeah. So yeah, so kind of folky because it's acoustic, kind of rock and rolly because of my background, and then country rocky, you know uh, that's where the Americana piece kind of comes in. um, I've kind of landed myself in this Americana, under this Americana umbrella, and which is about as broad as you can get. I mean, just about anybody can call themselves Americana, now. It seems like, because it's so many influences as a part of that. But so influences, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, am I? Or maybe you want to push me a little bit more here, trying to get a little more specific.
I'll give you an example, because for me, I grew up listening to a lot of folk music, like the pop folk, like John Denver
Right.
and James Taylor and those types of people. And so that's the kind of music that really moved me as a kid. So then I noticed that when I began writing, I kind of wrote in that vein. I mean, obviously I didn't write the same way, but there was just some influence there. But at the same time, I also listened to a lot of rock and roll when I was a kid.
Yeah,
And I had that influence going on too, like the Beatles, and all that.
sure.
So that was just my experience, but I'm sure there's music that we all gravitate to when we are first getting started out, that sort of becomes
Yeah,
the soundtrack of our lives.
sure, sure. Yeah. And I mean, if you listen to the, to Beatles music now, I mean, get yourself a Beatles, chord book and start looking at the chord progressions. I mean, they used all kinds of interesting chord progressions, especially as they worked at it, over the years. But I mean, there's just 1,000 songs that have not yet been written that are just lying there within all those chord progressions that they used. I mean, like you could open a songbook and, a Beatles songbook and, and play with the chords to a bridge or play with the chords to a verse and go, wow, I hadn't thought about using those chords in that particular way, and it would probably be inspirational to write a new song, but those kinds of chords have been around a long time. I guess it's just a question of, going, studying that stuff and, and learning from it. But yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, but that was the Beatles without the songbook of our lives. I mean, how do you, I mean, I don't think if, even if you're unaware of that, I don't see how you could avoid it, you know? Uh, how you could avoid the Beatles not being an influence,
Right. I didn't really have the technical knowledge as a songwriter because when I first started, I actually wasn't even writing on an instrument. I was just coming up with the melodies and the word, have the melody in my mind,
Yeah.
But anyway, the funny thing is when I started using an instrument and writing songs, I guess some of that Beatles really was coming through because I would take songs places chord structurally where they probably shouldn't have went, but yet, the musicians that I'd hire would say, that's technically something that wouldn't work, but somehow it's working.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's a lot of that Beatles stuff. And
Yeah.
also the Beach Boys, because Brian Wilson did that a lot too.
Right. Yeah, the Beatles challenged those, I mean, they did key changes, here and there, they make a key change for the bridge, and somehow manage to get back to the original key for the chorus. I mean, how'd they do that? It's all there hidden in those songbooks, get them out.
Well, I've done stuff too that I don't know how I managed to do it. It was weird. It was like it was just unconscious stuff going on that caused
Yeah.
me to write the song a certain way. And I would watch it stump the musicians sometimes but they were determined to figure it out. Like what is going on here? And they know it works because I'm able to sing it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. What is she doing? Where is she going? I don't know. Just follow her. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and so that's gonna make your music different and unique, and you're not gonna sound like everybody else playing the same three chords, and da 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 da. It's gonna take you to different places, and so that's got to be good, right? I mean, you don't need to. The wheel's already been invented. You don't need to keep reinventing the same wheel. Let's do something a little different.
it's
So,
true. It's true. And I don't know what you think about today's music in terms of the quality of it as far as putting it up against the stuff that we grew up with in our generation. But I will say this and then give you the floor. But I think a lot of it is just so rehashed that you almost can't even listen to it.
well, it's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but I mean, I have friends, people I know, musicians that who who you know feel pretty strongly that there aren't any good artists out anymore and new artists, and music is not what it used to be. Da 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 da. And clearly, music has changed. But but one of the things that I enjoy doing. I mean, I'm not making a plug for Spotify or any, but I've got Spotify in my car, and I just type in Americana, and I'll get these Spotify quote unquote Americana playlists, and it's all these bands that I have never heard of, and I'm going, man, there's just a lot of good stuff coming out now from bands that I'm not aware of. So I mean, Spotify for one thing has really expanded my horizons. And when one of my friends will say, there's no good music anymore, I say, well, maybe you need to listen a little deeper, or listen in different places, not deeper, but just listen in different places. There's a lot of good bands out there. I mean, I the band that I play with, that I started, is called The Promise, and we played at the Florida Americana Festival over in Brooksville last month, and there was this long list of bands, I'm thinking, I've never heard of any of these bands except for maybe one or two, but I was just blown away the whole weekend by how good these bands were, and I had never heard of them. But they were just playing, I mean, they were good bands and good players and playing some really interesting music, and so I really enjoyed that. So, I mean, I don't know that there's another version of the Beatles out there right now, but there's a lot of good music out there, I think, a lot of new music. And yeah, I mean, this was just the Florida Americana Festival. I mean, you could put that on in probably every state in the union, and you could probably have 40 or 50 bands from that particular state who are just as good, who I hadn't heard. I would probably not have heard of any of those bands either. There's just a lot of good stuff going on out there, I think. But at the same time, I go to the gym for, during the week in the mornings, and some of the playlists that they play, it's just like I mean, it's got a thump, it's the thump, 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 boom, 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 and for me, that starts to sound all pretty much all alike, after I've heard three or four tunes. So it depends on, I think, where you go to hear your music. I mean, you can be excited and stimulated, or you can say, oh my gosh, this is terrible. you know
There's a lot of talent out there, that's for sure. I agree with you there. Some of these young people, they are so gifted musically, and a lot of them can sing.
Oh
They could
yeah.
just like wipe the floor with me.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but it's amazing how the talent is just getting better. But there was something about the music when we were growing up that had some kind of quality that was very, very magical and very timeless, because even today it still holds its magic. And that's kind of like what I'm not hearing in the music. I mean, I hear a lot of really
Yeah,
well put together tunes, but it's like,
yeah.
is it taking you somewhere? Is it lifting you off the ground? It's really not.
I hear what you're saying. I guess I'm trying to be optimistic about it, but yeah, yeah. But I don't know if there's another Beatles out there now somewhere. I haven't heard of, but perhaps someone would argue that point with me, I'm sure.
I think it was just the day and time. Sometimes there's just these little pockets of space and time where something's going on, like somebody sprinkled fairy dust on it or whatever, and
Yeah,
it'll
yeah,
never be again. It's something that is very elusive. You cannot really figure out what caused it to happen, or chase it
yeah.
down even.
Right. So what do we do about that? Do we well, I think, do we celebrate that and go, yeah, 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 that's great, and then leave it there? Or well, I guess you and I are still doing it, aren't we? So I guess we're trying to keep the magic alive, at at least for us, and personally, and for those that we're surrounded by, our friends and people that we have a chance to play for, and we try to keep it going, and be excited and have fun. And I don't know how much fairy dust I'm sprinkling around when I play. Probably not that much.
I have to tell you though, your music was, I was enchanted with you. That's
And
why I called you and asked you to come and perform at our show that's coming up in June in the villages here. And I could have listened to you all day, Ken. It was amazing.
really,
Yes.
you're not sprinkling fairy dust on me now, are you?
No, I am telling you the truth. And I just went on and on to my fiance, like, wow. And he said, I know he's phenomenal. And I'm like, yeah. I said, we gotta ask him about coming to the showcase because not only are your songs amazing, but you're also such a great entertainer. And you couple those two things, it's like, wow. So we're excited to have you. And I wanted to know our time's sort of running out, but where
Yeah,
can people get your music online?
I have a YouTube. Actually, I have a YouTube page, and I also have a Spotify page for for Ken Holt. So those are both there. Um, I can't. Yeah, so those are both there. You might have to kind of wade through the algorithms to get to me, but I am there. And then most recently, like I said, I mentioned I have a band now, and it's called The Promise. It's a three-piece band, and that's the band that played over at the Americana Festival, and we've I just put a couple of songs out, um, and I think those are both on Spotify and YouTube, and all the usual suspects. We did the distribution to 130 streaming services. Don't ask me what those 130 are, but you know. So that music, some of the new music that I've been doing most recently is on the Promise, is under The Promise. And there's a lot of promises out there. I'm telling you, after we named ourselves The Promise, I went, oh my God, there's 1,000 bands named The Promise. So we're in there somewhere. So that's the latest stuff. And then like I said, there's a Ken Holt Spotify page and a Ken Holt YouTube page that have some videos. I've done some video, and I've got a little. It's one of the things I do in my studio here. So there's some of that as well.
We'll make
Yeah.
sure that everybody gets those links. And like I said, we're super, super excited to see you in the villages on June 15th and just can't wait to see your show.
All right. Thank you, Luann, for calling me and setting this whole thing up, and for the gig on the 15th. I'm looking forward to that too. So thank you very much.